Hello, everyone. I would like to give you a warm welcome to one and all. I'm Praveen Suri. I'm part of data analytics practice in Tech Mahindra as competency lead for big data technology in global capacity. And today I will be hosting the session around how intelligent operations can help the manufacturing industry using the manufacturing command center. So I have our guest for today's session, Mr. Saurabh Jha, who is leading and global head of the data analytics practice in Tech Mahindra, and Mr. Ram Venkatesh, who is chief technology officer at the Cloudera. So before starting our session, I would like to give you some understanding and some glimpse of what we are actually going to discuss. So as we are aware, data is something which is becoming foundation for any industries. It is playing a pivotal role in making informed decisions, optimization of processes, and improve overall performance. So let's understand how data and its various aspects are important for manufacturing industry from our guest. So, so I would like to shoot first question to our uh, guest. So as we are aware, industry is evolving. So what are the key challenges and latest data trends we have observed and which are quite prevalent in our manufacturing industry? So I have this question for both of you gentlemen. So the stage is on for you. Thanks.
Thanks, Praveen. So let me start off. Since you said challenges and the trends for data analytics, so I'll quickly start with the challenges. So, see, manufacturing industry, funnily enough, every few years it goes through a different kind of a challenge, and that is in terms of automation, right? So ever since industry revolution, every few years there is a new level of automation. You had manual manufacturing, then came industrial manufacturing, robotic manufacturing, and now it has of course gone much beyond that. So there is always this constant fight against cost of manufacturing. That's number one, which has to continuously go down. Otherwise, they lose their market share, they lose their competitive edge in the market. So I think that's the first challenge. And of course, we will see how and if can data analytics solve these problems. So that's the first. Second challenge, and while it has always been a challenge, but it was most pronounced when the entire world was made to stay at home. And that was during the COVID pandemic, right? The supply chain issues. And even today, we are grappling with those issues. I mean, if you look at chips, even today, it's not back to the levels that it was at in 2019, 2020. So, and when we talk about supply chain, a lot of us always think about, okay, immediate supply chain, your immediate suppliers. But actually, given the level of globalization in the world today, the supply chain itself has its tentacles spread all over the world, which means it's multi-layer supply chain. So just knowing if my supplier is working or not is not enough. I think it's very, very important to know what is the second levels, what is the situation with the second level supplier, third level, fourth level, or as you would call it as nth level supplier, right? So that's another challenge. Third challenge is how to continuously keep your product at the cutting edge of or at the cutting edge of customer satisfaction, at the cutting edge of technology in the market, and that points to the R&D cycle of a particular product. Now what that means is that there is a when we talk about manufacturing, there are of course multiple stages. You start with R&D, then you have supply chain, production planning, operations planning, then you have sales, marketing, logistics, and so on. And R&D forms a very, very important role. So the question is, how do we connect R&D to the end customers? So say, for example, you launch a product or you have an existing product in the market. And today it is possible, for example, to in real time to know, when a product is breaking down, how is it performing, and so on and so forth. Now, if you look at earlier days, yes, this data would be gathered over many days, many months, many years. It would flow into the R&D department that, okay, this particular part in, let's say if it's a car or if it's, or some other kind of industrial unit, that this particular part breaks down after so many years, after so many months, there would be an analysis and then there would be an R&D. Today, it is much easier to actually simplify this entire process. So that's another level of challenge. How do you connect the real world to your R&D department for immediate product feedback and development, right? So that's second. Third is when it comes to your visibility. So supply chain is one part of it, but again, because of globalization, you're not manufacturing at one place and you're not manufacturing necessarily the entire unit at one place. You could be manufacturing different units at different places, a complete unit at one place in different countries, and so on. So it's very important to have a single window view, right, or a single dashboard view, or what we are calling as the command center, right, of your and not only your manufacturing process, your plants, but your supply chain, your downstream logistics, and so on and so forth. Are all the companies at this level today? I think the answer is no for most of them. And those are the kind of queries that we continue to grapple with our customers, which we are trying to solve with Industry 4.0, with more efficient nth tier supply chain analytics, as we call it, where you have a view into what your last supplier, what is the status of the last supplier, and if that supplier is not able to supply something, what is the impact on your production line today, in the next 2 hours, or in the next 8 hours, and what are the alternatives, and what are the things that, or which other supplier can you go to, vendor ranking, and so on and so forth. So, and the other thing is, of course, when it comes to machinery, for example, the thing about predictive maintenance, right? I mean, you don't have to. Today, we have technology in place. I mean, again, using data and analytics, and of course AI, where we can predict the breakdown of machines, and not only machines, even end products. So, for some of our customers, for example, who are into railroad business, right, and they have their containers and coaches running all over the country, they can continuously locate their coaches. They can look at the breakdown levels, whether it's to do with brake, or whether it's to do with any other part in that particular container or a coach. So predictive maintenance, I think, is a very, very important use case as well for manufacturing industry. So these are some of them. I would invite Ram to probably share a few more from his perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Saurabh. I think just to build on top of what you're saying, right? I think in the last 24 to 36 months, manufacturing and supply chain, right? We've all been through the pandemic, and we're seeing sort of these same shifts that you're talking about towards being able to be connected, to being able to be efficient, and now to be agile, right? And so all of these reflect also in the underlying technology innovation trends and adoption that manufacturing and supply chain has got to go through. For example, when the whole world went remote, public cloud became like a critical part of everybody's strategy, right? Even to get full visibility into your supply chain, your data centers were important, but that the global visibility had to be enabled by public cloud, right? So I think companies adopting public cloud for data and analytics, this has become like a huge technology trend, right? That we're seeing in this space. Traditionally, manufacturing, we've had an emphasis on making sure that we have very efficient processes inside organizations. Now, increasingly, the focus is on making sure that we have this connected supply chain function at that global level, right? So that's one. But as the effects of the pandemic have started to wean off, there's so much economic uncertainty now. And this is always a sector, as you point out, efficiency is core to what we do here, right? Is that there is this ongoing expectation that every year is going to be more efficient than the one that came before, and the one that came before, and the one came before. There's no limit in sight to that. And that's part of the ethos of how we operate in this space. And so the shift to public cloud, which was necessitated by the pandemic, now is being tempered by making sure that your cost and your spend that you're doing for as part of your operations are justifiable, right? Which means I think that increasingly organizations are conscious about where are we spending in the public cloud? Are all of the scenarios that we are deploying there, are they appropriate? Are we leveraging the capabilities of the cloud where it's appropriate, or should we use cloud native technologies, but also have a focus on hybrid instead of public cloud, right? So I think that this is another key thing that we are seeing, especially in manufacturing. And the last key thing I want to point out is, it used to be that we had these large connected use cases for supply chain optimization and things like that. Increasingly, we are seeing this is fractally broken down into hundreds of use cases, going to thousands of use cases that touch upon all the pieces you talked about. It's like it starts from the customer, the customer experience, getting that real-time feedback in, making sure that you're sourcing materials in the right parts of the world, making sure that you have an environmentally sound and sustainable strategy around them, what your carbon footprint is when it comes to manufacturing, when it comes to supply chain, when it comes to logistics, right? And of course, what are your turnaround times for the individual discrete steps that you have? Are you being as efficient as you could be about them, right? Do you have models for procurement that align up with the supply chain initiatives and the manufacturing initiatives that you have in place? If you think of the entire process now, is like there are hundreds and hundreds of data and analytics use cases. This is a great time for us to be in this space, right? Because this is for us to deliver on real value for our customers. The opportunity is there, and as customers' appetite for getting to more and more predictive analytics as part of their manufacturing supply chain initiatives, that's the next wave of innovation that I expect that we're going to see in this space. I think it's a pretty exciting time for us to be in manufacturing with data and analytics today.
Thanks, Ram, and thanks, Saurabh. I mean, it's really useful insight on challenges which the industry is facing right now, and especially in terms of data trends as well. So now when it comes to especially we are talking about improved operations, R&D, global supply chain optimization, predictive maintenance, quality control, and of course, automation is one of the key aspect of that. And also we are taking care of various aspect of the environment as well. I mean, we are also taking care, or I mean, with the help of data, we can relate those challenges and also, of course, carbon neutrality goal. I mean, along with data, I mean, we can definitely achieve these goals quite early. I mean, with the help of data and all. So, of course, it is very much useful around that. So now, please allow me to dig a little bit deeper on this aspect. So my next question is about how can clients and consumer can leverage this intelligent operation? I mean, since we are talking about intelligent operation in manufacturing. So, and what are its key prerequisite and constraint and challenges associated to it? So, which client may face? I mean, of course, we would like to understand about that. So please, can you please help us to understand all these aspects, especially prerequisite and challenges?
Ram, would you like
Absolutely.
to first? Yeah.
Sure, certainly. If you think of it foundationally, right, for a strategy that is centered around data and analytics, I say having trustworthy data is like that foundational layer, right? Because we've all been in conversations where, especially the more critical the decision, your ability to trust the data that you're working with is so important. But to make sure that you have all of the right checks and balances around data quality, around data ownership, around how data actually gets sourced and collected and cleaned. Is it current? Right? Considerations like that are really, this is what we call like a fabric layer, right? And increasingly, all of these considerations for trustworthy data, it doesn't matter where the data was born, right? But we know that now the sources for this data have multiplied. It used to be that you had the exhaust coming off of your ERP systems or your transactional systems that were the main inputs to a process like this. But now you have data coming in from IoT type use cases where you have actually the line itself is spitting off data in real time. You have data from customer behavior patterns. You have data from SaaS systems that might be running in the cloud. You have data from systems inside your enterprise, so on and so forth. So being able to consistently manage data, regardless of where it originates and sources from, in a way that now you are confident about the underlying data sets that you're talking about. I think that is the basis for data-centric thinking to really start, right? So the key trend that we are seeing there is increasingly that enterprises are looking at data not as something that sits behind a report somewhere, but it's really data is the product, right? It's a valuable product. It has value potential, both top line and bottom line. It has attributes, it has ownership inside the organization. You can always authoritatively go and ask somebody, who owns this data set? Why do we think this is the right data for us to start from, right? That layer, I think, is extremely critical to have a data strategy as a prerequisite, right? The second piece is the data is great if it's available, but on its own, it's not going to do anything for you, right? It's all the intelligent people who have to have access to the data using the tools and techniques that they are actually going to use to consume it, to transform it in the ways that are right for your business. So the second layer on top of this that we see is about being able to provide, you can call this like self-service analytics, but it's really meeting your data consumers where they are. right? One of the trends that we see is if you just look at the number of people in an organization who have data in their title, right? Over the last 5 years, you could add a few zeros to them. It used to be even among our large enterprises, you had 500 or 1,000 people who worked with data. Today, very easily, that could be 10, 20, 30,000 people. So when you have large numbers of users who need access to all of this data, right, reducing the barriers to training entry for them, right, meeting them where they are, being comfortable with the tools that they are already using, being able to do all of these things in that self-service manner where without friction, they can pick up the data sets, they can do an analysis confidently, they can come up with a conclusion that makes sense for the business, and then being able to take that insight and then monetize it, right? That's the second step in this journey that we see to being like, data driven or data literate for an enterprise is having that self-service flow, right? So I think these are sort of two foundational things that go a long way towards creating a very robust data and analytics strategy. Saurabh, I'm sure you have a perspective to chime in on this.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So, see, from my perspective, you have covered, I think, some important parts there. So, the two things that I would like to add on to it. So, one is, I mean, and the takeaway from my answer will be just two words. One is actionable insight, and the second thing is use cases. Now, why do I bring these up? I'll tell you. So, see, when we talk about traditional data ecosystem, right? So it was a fairly straightforward left to right structure. You had data coming in, you had data being aggregated somewhere, then you had your data marts or views or whatever, and you had your reports. And these were all, the reports were fairly static. Most of the ingestion was batch. And I think this is about 5 years old, right? Now, on the data sourcing side, I think we have already moved to the next level, which is, of course, you have real-time data sourcing, you have event-driven architectures and all those things. And we have enough and more technologies to take care of that part. And we have enough and more technologies for data aggregation as well. You talk about, multiple platforms and, Cloudera being one of the leading ones, of course. In terms of data aggregation and analysis and being able to provide that data for reporting, dashboarding, AI, ML, and so on. The important part, and which Praveen you touched upon, in when you're talking about the first question, is how does this data and the insight that is derived from it, how can it be actually turned into an actionable insight? What that means is either a human-driven action or an automated action. Right. So, say for example, I'll give you a simple example: is there is a plant and there is a machinery, and we take enough inputs from the sensors from that machinery, and there is a critical failure that's about to happen as per the predictive model. Now the question is that just a report to be seen, or is that something that can be automated? That if the model is predicting a critical failure, you stop the machine automatically without human intervention, right? And I'm not talking about just the operations head sitting in that factory. I'm talking about a factory probably somewhere in Vietnam and the operations head sitting somewhere in the US. Doesn't matter, right? So it should just happen as a part of the system. So I believe without automation, AI, ML, and these insights, they all have to work hand in hand to really be able to utilize the power of data analytics and AI, right? So that's one part, actionable insights. The other part that I want to touch upon are use cases. So, Ram talked about, a few dozen use cases now have turned into hundreds of use cases. Now, why I'm talking about use cases is because almost every enterprise in the world today is thinking of the futuristic architecture that they want to get into, right? And at least that has been my experience in the last 2 years. Everybody is on this journey, right, of how the next generation data architecture should look like. How should I derive my insights? How should I democratize my data? How should I create those data products and provide it to the consumers within my organization? A lot of these questions. And I think the answer actually lies in the use cases, right? And not thousands of use cases. It's about prioritizing those use cases, because what is happening is, if you go, full throttle on an engagement without knowing as to what is coming at the end of it, you'll probably end up in a similar situation where we started from. So you had 50,000 reports, you will end up with 50,000 reports or maybe more. And that's not going to help. So if, for example, if a use case is that I want an automated control of a machine based on, I mean, this is based on the example I just gave, based on an alarm which is set by an ML, whatever, a machine learning algorithm, then what I would like to figure out is, in order to run that machine learning algorithm, what is the data I need? Hence, what is the data product I need? Hence, where does the data need to come from? And that is the way to go about it. So we have to reverse the entire story from going from left to right to left. And that is the only way to really set up your future state of architecture, rather than again ending up with 50,000 reports, which really have not been useful. So like I said, I mean, there are, of course, many more points in terms of data strategy and governance and stewardship. I think they have been spoken about a lot. All of us are aware of it, that these are all fundamental to any kind of future data platform and architecture. But I think these two things, one is actionable insight and other is use case driven architectures. I think that is very important. And yeah, I think there is some maturity that still needs to be reached in the market in order to actually follow these principles. But yeah.
Okay, so data culture is another important aspect over there, and of course, maturity level we are already talking. So if I'm summarizing all these prerequisites, so it is more related to like how a particular organization is basically matured for the implementation of data culture, how they are, what is their methodology or thought process to collect storage of that, I mean, just collection and storage of the data, how their data strategies around like for the latest and convergent data architectures like data mesh and fabric, etc. So it's really fantastic and really insightful about that to understand all these prerequisites and constraints. So now I'm becoming more curious about the way forward and how we can get benefits out of it. So my next question is especially about the operational part and command center. So if we want to understand what are the intelligent operation with the manufacturing command center and what are the business benefits and value industry is looking from all these stuff, especially from the hybrid data and its platform. So what is your thought process or few pointers about it? Over to you, Saurabh and Ram.
All right. So see, in terms of business benefits, I think, we can list, I can, even without looking anywhere, I can list down hundreds of business benefits. And whenever we start listing out business benefits, I mean, my approach is always to start from the customer end, because any business basically exists for customer delight, right? So starting from a much better customer experience. And in case of manufacturing, how do you do that? In being able to provide them with a quality product, a product that is cost effective, which means it has been, let's start relating it backward, right? So a quality product and a product that is cost effective. How would you achieve that? You would achieve that by actually manufacturing it in a cost effective manner, which means your quality control. And when I say quality control, how will you drive down your cost wastage in the company by ensuring that you reduce the number of what do you call it, rejected or discarded products from your production line. So if today, let's say you have a 97% approval ratio on the production line, it should go up to 99 or maybe 100%. So which means real-time quality control, and wherein you can use so many cognitive technologies, right, at different stages in your production line, whether it's computer vision or, and then of course your sensors and all kinds of ML algorithms and so on and so forth. So for example, if there are, say, 20 parts which are being manufactured as a part of your production line, and if you find a fault in one of those parts, you don't let it come into that final product at all. You just stop it and you bring the next part in, which passes the quality control. So your end product will not get discarded from a QC. So that's another one. Third is we already spoke about earlier, which is about R&D. And R&D is one part. The other part is also agility of a manufacturing process. So today, for example, of course, there are manufacturing companies which manufacture limited line of products, but there are also manufacturing companies which have multiple line of products, and they have to keep on changing the configuration depending upon the customer demand. And so one is an annual demand, one is a seasonal demand, right? And more than that, there is also the whole notion of shifting customer demands over time. So today, let's say you have a certain product which has different levels. So starting from on a cost basis, so something which starts cheap and then you go to the costlier one. And let's say you had 70, 60% of your sales happening in the low to medium cost segment of your product. But suddenly over 3 to 4 months, because of some economic situation, the stock market boom, whatever, the customers now want to go and start buying your, high-end products. Now, if you're not able to change your production line in time, you are losing market to your competitor. So using AI, ML, data, all of this to actually how do I say, to bring in agility into your production line. That's another major benefit, not just for your customers, but also for yourself, right? Now, there's so many other angles. See, when we talk about data, there's a whole talk about data monetization. And when we talk about data monetization, there could be multiple types. There is, of course, one is you sell data for money. That's as simple as that, which we typically refer to as external monetization. And then you have internal monetization, where you're using your own data or your data combined with some external data to improve your own revenue, to reduce your cost, to improve your operational efficiencies. So that is a reality today. You can combine. So say, for example, say a car manufacturer, for example, sharing data with a wheel manufacturer, in terms of the driving habits of its car drivers. And we are talking about connected cars here, right? So based on which the wheel manufacturer will take those inputs into their R&D and design their wheels as per the prevailing habits of the drivers in a certain market, which could be different from US to UK to Europe to India, for example, right? So immense benefits that we can see. Supply chain we already spoke about. I mean, there is no end to benefits in having nth-tier visibility into your supply chain. And there could be any event at any point in time in the world. So let's say you're, 8th level supplier, you have 5 different suppliers supplying a certain part for your end product. One supplier shuts down, within minutes, you should be able to divert the order to another supplier automatically. In fact, there should ideally not be any human intervention. That's the ideal state, where one supplier is not able to supply, the order moves to the next supplier automatically, where the ranking has already been done. So a lot of business benefits, Praveen, and like I said, in the previous question that I said, so these are all these benefits are nothing but use cases, right? And for that, you will have to see what is the data that is required, who needs that data, where will that data come from, is everything internal, or do we need to get some data from external, third party, or our partners in the ecosystem, and so on. Like I said, let's say for an industrial manufacturing company which manufactures, heavy duty, industrial machines, for them, they could have a different ecosystem versus say, an auto manufacturer, right? Versus a phone manufacturer, for example. So they can share data amongst themselves and they can utilize it, for different scenarios. So huge number of benefits for them, and ultimately based on what is required in the end state, that will really define, where your data resides, how it is structured, and so on and so forth.
Really great. I mean, Ram, would you like to add some pointers over here?
I think that was a great summary, right? I think to net it out, I feel like it's amazing that we're talking about new ways to collaborate between all the parts of the supply chain, right? The second piece is we've all seen the requirements for agility and optionality, being able to react at the speed of the business, right? We have seen how quickly product mixes evolve, be it from like luxury to mid-market to mass market and back and forth, vice versa, right? So there's a third part, but I think the key is I really love the way Saurabh phrased this use case-based approach. I'm going to take this a little half step forward, Saurabh. I think if there's one thing people take away from this, it will be, it's really outcome-oriented thinking, right? Focus on the business outcomes that you want that are driven by these use cases. And then everything we're talking about here, data and analytics and AI is in support of that mission. And the more we can get that to be routine and programmatized, I think that's where you see the benefits of data and AI for this sort of integrated picture that we have between IT and operations in the context of manufacturing.
Yeah, really. I mean, it is really nice and thoughtful around, like, especially in terms of supply chain management. I mean, since we have seen a lot of disaster during pandemics in supply chain management. So, of course, I mean, data is something, I mean, which can just enable the optimization related to that. I mean, that can be backed by the data sharing and data monetization. When I'm saying data monetization, then I'm simply doesn't mean by the like revenue improvement and all, but it is also like related to like how we are actually sharing our data to internal and external customers as well, or internal and external users also. Now, since most of the points are related data, so now here in my understanding, I mean, these points are basically related to various technologies which are related to like information and data. And also it is having some convergence around the operational technologies as well. So again, I mean, this is one of the important aspects which I can observe right now, that how like role and importance of IT and OT, especially I'm just using abbreviation around information technology and operational technology. So how this convergence and real-time streaming with the analytics can be useful on this area. I mean, especially in terms of manufacturing, since we are talking a lot of about like real-time analytics and real-time view of the production environment and so forth. So what do you think? How is it possible with that? And what is the importance of the IT and OT convergence over here?
Look, I think that some of this is naturally, I would say, the technologies are much more converged than they were even a decade ago, right? I feel like observability, which is sort of at the heart of operations now, this is now elevated to a nice first class discipline that just pervades how we think about operationalizing these use cases, right? If you think of traditionally the role of IT is in making sure that we have reliable systems, that we have all the right methods and processes in place to programmatize execution, right? Observability, I think, is very much related to sort of how you operationalize these use cases. How do you make sure that you get that closed loop experience all the way from concept to actually having it be in production? I think that these are increasingly, you have to look at this as part of one integrated holistic exercise. So I think that convergence between development, deployment, and operations, especially using like a DevSecOps kind of mindset, I think that's really critical to how you think about agility, right? Agility at the end of the day comes from eliminating complexity, right? It comes from automating routine actions, but it also comes from being able to make changes fast, but in a reliable, predictable way, where you know that you can quickly make the changes that you need operationally without impact to upstream or downstream systems. Right? So I think if you think of this as, we have seen these benefits in other parts of the organization when it comes to adopting technologies like containers and orchestration and Kubernetes and cloud native. And now we see all of those same mega trends being applied in the context of data to scenarios like manufacturing and supply chain, right? So I think that this is where I see, this whole notion of DevSecOps increasingly being part of the internal operations of companies. I think that's a very important trend for us to continue to build maturity in as a practice. Okay. The other piece I think that's like really important when you think about it is, we've talked about sort of all of the benefits of a data-driven approach and outcome-oriented thinking. The other piece that we have to be very mindful of is in the environments that we operate in, right? If you have this reliance on data and analytics, now data is becoming core of how the business actually functions. So making sure that we can do this in a way that there is no disruption to the business from a data standpoint is also critical. So I view this is where, privacy and security and governance and all of these other aspects, they're intimate to making sure that your operations are actually secure, especially in the context of like a connected supply chain. And if you're operating in 2 or 3 continents, which is pretty much everybody these days, right? The data localization and data sovereignty laws have also evolved over time, where now you need to be making sure that you're compliant with them in the context of data, in the context of your supply chain. I think that's another aspect that you have to think about when you're operationalizing your data use cases.
Great. Yeah, it's really great and really insightful about the operational aspect and information technology aspect of the data. I mean, especially when we are talking about improved supply chain, agile manufacturing, or real-time quality control, especially when if we have to take some corrective actions about before, launching the product into or shipment the product into the customer and all. So of course, these are the key aspects, including DevSec operations, since we have already mentioned. And also data is actually playing a crucial role as a as a key driver for the improved safety, especially when we are talking about manufacturing. I mean, there are a lot of factories are there, a lot of machineries are there, and if we can utilize data to understand what are the security aspect, so definitely I think that part data can also improve. So it's a really great insight around it. So now, for sake of our audience, I would like to request you to just give you please give us a precise summary and what are your conclusive remark on every aspect which we have touched upon related to data and manufacturing industry. Over to you, James.
Thanks, Praveen. So just first, I'll touch upon the last question that we had around real time. See, it's very simple. For automation and for AI and actionable insights to work, it has to be real time. Batch cannot work. It's as simple as that, right? So that is a very basic, simple. And how to operationalize it, Ram already covered with DevSecOps and agility and all that. Anyway, to just summarize, I think from my point of view, this is definitely not the last of efficiency run that we will see in manufacturing industry. But with the kind of technologies that we have, in our fold today, whether it's AI, machine learning, analytics, and very, very advanced data management and insights and so on, I think we have great tools in our hand. And as someone who we talk to customers and we help them take the step towards their call it digitization or transformation or making them ready for the future. We'll just continue to try and help them, try and guide them as much as possible towards the right approach to actually do this, rather than, like I mentioned earlier, a bulk. We have to do this because everyone else is doing it. So, like I said, use case based approach, outcome based models, and so on and so forth. Because this is definitely a necessity. I think if you really look at it in the next, so it started 2 years back. I think it's going to go on for another 2 to 3 years, bare minimum, where we will start seeing companies at a few of them at 60, 70, 80% maturity. But the important part is the winner at the end of it will be the one who actually implemented this transition the most efficiently. So that's my take on it, Ram.
Yeah, I think that it's largely aligned with what you're saying. Is that I think this is a journey, right? I think the move to making sure that you have a more data-aware manufacturing and supply chain process. I think this journey involves understanding where you are in terms of your data strategy and your maturity. You need to have a viewpoint on the things that are the needle movers for your business that data and AI can enable, not the other way around. Right. So there are, the nice thing that we have in the landscape is that you have a lot of choices to choose from, but you have to decide how this fits into your overall strategy, which is kind of why I think the basics of trustworthy data, of the needle mover use cases, and how you are connecting the dots from getting to the outcomes that you're seeking for using your data that you have, and then filling in the gaps, like, to get this outcome, if I need real-time data from this part of the organization that I don't have it. That way of thinking about the problem makes sure that you're delivering continuously on the efficiency improvements that you're shooting for, and this gives you a very robust, very explainable data strategy for your company.
I like that, explainable. I've never heard it in context of data.
Awesome.
All right, gents. I mean, it's really well explained. I mean, and I would really appreciate, especially for your time and how beautifully you have explained about all aspects around that. So our point is I can understand it's very much clear in terms of intelligent operations, what is the use of data in manufacturing industries and how we can leverage it. And especially it's a really great to understand how client can basically start their journey. I mean, to leverage their existing data, how they can enable their entire organization to make it data-driven organization. I mean, it can be starting from understanding the use case. I mean, use case could be like anything. I mean, it could be starting from their especially core manufacturing use case to, just informed decision or just looking at the data and create some reports around it or just do some operationalized purpose of the data and all. I mean, use cases are endless. I mean, our journey can start from just identification of those use cases to ultimately get the data monetized as well. I mean, especially like sharing the data with the internal and external stakeholder within the industry. So definitely it's, I mean, opportunities are endless around it. So as I understand, our point of view is not only limited to operation or quality control or supply chain optimization and agile manufacturing, etc., using data, but it is also focused on some key environmental ask as well. I mean, as we are aware, various governments are like moving towards, or just they have like set up some goal related to like having economies related to like energy, I mean energy efficiency and carbon footprint reduction as well. So all these aspects are also very much important around that. So now, as I would like to close the session over here. However, I mean, if you want to know more and want to understand how is this idea can benefit your industry or your company, so you can always reach out to us. So thanks everyone. Thanks for joining this session.